Everyone for joining us this evening. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Very happy Mr. Lakim is here to give me a hand as we get this presentation started. So hopefully we've addressed some of those issues on my end, and we're going to get going. Just so everybody knows, I think we got about 85 people joining us this evening. So if you put your questions,
Richard, we're about 130 now.
Okay, 130, great. So if you want to put your questions into chat box, we have a couple of staff members who are going to pre-populate a Google Doc. And, depending upon the questions that come up, I can answer those as you spend the next, hour or so. So Mr. Lakim, I just, he's going to advance through the presentation. So if you can take the next slide, Darren, please. Great. So just so you know, this is number 3. Last week, we had a presentation, just giving a little background information, 2 special ed presentations, and clearly we put today on the board because last week's 4 o'clock showing audio is horrible and things of that nature. You can go ahead, Darren. The goal of the presentation is to, for many of you, you may or may not have seen the other presentations that Mr. Lakima had presented to the community. We want to try to paint for everybody a good picture of what school is going to look like for the 2021 school year, and in today's presentation, especially for students classified through the Committee on Special Education. Okay, Darren, next one. So I've gotten a couple emails from parents over the last several weeks, and I've responded to them, and I mentioned this last week as well. Nothing's changed with education. Unlike what happened last year with the school closures related to COVID-19 and what we had to put together literally in a weekend. This year, it's schools in session. Excuse me. Everything's on the board. The children are always entitled to a free and appropriate public education. The individual education plan is the individual education plan. It's to be maximized to the greatest extent possible, regardless of the modality of presentation, whether it's virtual, hybrid, or back to the way things were as far as being in person. And as always, the Committee on Special Education, the Committee on Preschool Education, looking to continue good conversation with parents, teachers, administrators, all in the goal of ensuring that students classified through the Committee on Special Ed receive the education that they're all entitled to. Okay, Darren, next one, please. These are some bullets that were also presented part of the 15 presentation previously. So I included them purposefully because a lot of the information was embedded in those 15 sessions. And this was just going to add on a little bit deeper. So once again, as far as the state education department is concerned, we provide the necessary instructional and technological supports to meet the needs of students. As you're all aware, through Mr. Lakima's office, we are distributing Chromebooks to students, classified and non-classified. For students who are classified, many of them who needed access to technology had that on their IEPs vis-a-vis a Chromebook and/or an iPad. So many of them had those additional technologies to engage in instruction. And however, moving forward, if some of those things continue to present themselves, that's where the Committee on Special Education is able to meet again and add those instructional technologies onto students' IEPs. So we have many students with IEPs, as I want to mention, who have Chromebooks and technology to access the virtual platform. In addition, for those who maybe didn't need it at home or didn't have as many devices at home, through Mr. Lakima's office, I think going back to last spring, we lent out, I think, 1,500, and I think within the last 2 weeks, it's up to about 700 or 800. So once again, we want to make sure that our students have the technology that they need in order to access the educational curriculum, especially as we're starting off in a virtual model. Thanks, Darren. Next one. This has been really the main question. I've gotten this from many parents. I'm going to sit in this kind of slide for a moment or two because people want to know what's going to happen after virtual model. So as I've indicated to the first presentation last week and in several emails to parents that I'm sure they've shared throughout the community, The district is starting virtual, and phase 2 is going to be a hybrid model in which we're going to bring in K1 and 2, and that's inclusive of special ed students K1 and 2, both in self-contained programs as well as ICT. The goal, because that was clearly what the state education department had indicated to school districts, that as we approach the 2021 school year, we really needed to take a hard look and be creative with the needs of students. Who are our most neediest students? When I think about the students in district, I think about the students in those self-contained classes. They really have a high degree of need. So although the hybrid model is going to start the last week in September, going into October roughly, we're going to need to take our time, as I've told many parents. We need to ensure that everybody's health and safety is of paramount importance. So we have processes and policies in place to address those issues. We're going to bring in the K1-2 model. We need to make sure everything is really, really on top par regarding our daily health screenings and our PPE and transportation and the cohorts in the classrooms. But as indicated previously, assuming all of that works out well, and that's the goal, as a department and as a district, we do want to see if we can bring in more students ahead of their same age peers, especially our students in our self-contained programs. So as you've seen in the first presentation, phase 2 is K1-2, phase 3 would be 3-4, I think phase 4 would be 5-6, and then we get on to middle school and high school. What I'd like to do definitely at K6, assuming everything works according to plan, we bring in our kindergarten, first and second graders. When we think about then phasing in third and fourth graders, the goal would be to bring in the rest of our self-contained students K-6. In addition, what we'd also bring in at that point would be our related service providers. So the goal would be fairly early in October at a K-6 level, have all of our self-contained students in addition to all of the related service providers, which are speech, OT, PT, and counseling. So that is the goal, but I do want to want to indicate to everybody that that goal can only be achieved as long as the health and safety of all students and staff are taken care of. So long as our policies and daily procedures are in place and they're good and everything's working out real well, that is the goal of the district. And clearly, once those students come back to school, we'll be in a better position to bring in our students 7 to 8 and 9 to 12. So that is the goal, and that is what we're working on. And just so people in the community are aware, we have had conversations with our building principals K-6. We've indicated to them that's the goal, and they're working with their teachers to collaborate. In addition to that, our self-contained classes usually have no more than 15 students. Some have a little bit less. So once again, depending upon many variables, because there are many variables here, we need to ensure that students can wear masks. Those who can wear masks, they can appropriately social distance. So when they come into our classrooms, we're going to need to make sure that, in fact, those factors are well. And if they are in good shape, and if the classrooms are big enough, once again, for our self-contained students K-6, initially, as we roll out the hybrid model, we do want to see if we can bring them in for 4 days a week. We have some classes that, based upon the nature of the students' disabilities, they're some of our most neediest students. Some of those classes tend to be small in 15 students, maybe 8 and 10 students. So we don't want to break them into cohorts and bring them in every 2 days if we can help it. Once again, depending upon the nature of the child's disability. And as long as we can maintain social distancing, mask wearing, proper hand hygiene, things of that nature, we are looking to move towards bringing those students in 4 days a week. We have the space in the rooms, the numbers are low enough, and that is the goal of the district. But once again, I do want to indicate to everybody, we're not going to just jump into that. We need to do it thoughtfully and meaningfully. And then once those things are taken care of, then we can segue in to a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday model for those students. Thanks, Darren. Can you go to the next page? As far as goals, that's also another common theme, and I mentioned this last week as well. When the program was built, when we had to go virtual due to the closures back in the spring, we had to put this together, like I said, in a weekend. Clearly, there was room for improvement. And what we did coming into the summertime with both the typical summer school program for high school students 9 to 12, as well as the program of extended school year, ESY, for special ed students, which was, once again, both 6-week programs. We really use those as kind of, little kind of a way to kind of push the envelope to ensure greater access to daily, synchronous instruction with our teachers. We're happy to say that we use those 2 smaller group models quite successfully, especially in ESY. The feedback I got from the teachers, Miss Costable, who was she kind of led the charge this summertime in the ESY program, as well as some parents, is that it was a much more meaningful experience. It was not as much asynchronous learning, which many parents had a difficult, and students had a difficult time with. So we took those learnings and applied them to the virtual platform moving forward for 2021. So if you take a look at the response here, and this kind of relates to the goals, you should have a different experience with related service providers, speech, OT, and PT, based upon how often they should be able to deliver synchronous instruction to your children. As well, we talked to the related service providers because the goals are come back in a hybrid model. And when we built these IEPs for the 2021 school year last spring, I can tell you, like everybody I'm speaking to right now, I was not planning on being virtual 2021. I thought the pandemic and things would have kind of evened out over the summertime, and then I would be welcoming everybody back to school come September 8th. And that's clearly not what happened. So IEPs were written. Everybody assumed we were going to come back in person. So we're directing the related service providers to take a look at goals. They may need to simply make a couple of adjustments based upon their learnings from last spring and over the summertime. And to take a look at the goals, as I indicated in the comment here, they are written for the school year, and that depending upon what seems to be an appropriate focus, our speech, OT, and PT individuals can really pick and choose and figure out what's the best way to start if we're going to start it virtually. So they have their autonomy, and if goals need to be adjusted, we can definitely adjust them based upon the virtual platform. And hopefully based upon what we've done vis-a-vis the summertime, parents and students alike are going to have a much better experience with our synchronous instruction. Darren, next slide, please. As far as assessment and reevaluation, this has also been a big topic coming up. We had many students who were referred to the Committee of Special Education last spring, even during when schools closed. And the direction and information provided to the teams in the buildings was that if you didn't need to have any kind of in-person assessment, and I'm also a certified school psychologist, so I've done this for many, many years. But if the committee didn't need you to come into a building and say, go through a typical cognitive assessment or go through an achievement assessment, if they were able to use information that was available at the buildings, and clearly they could take that and move forward and have a committee meeting. However, most of the students who were initially referred needed to have that in-person face-to-face assessment. Most of our students classified have a learning disability. And one of the key ways of determining the presence of a learning disability is to work with the school psychologist and go through a cognitive and achievement assessment. And there was no way around that. So those were put on pause. And clearly schools aren't open to, I think today was the first day where they were all officially open. Teachers came back and obviously did virtual PD. So moving forward, we're working with the school psychologists, the speech therapists, OT and PT as appropriate to begin the reassessment again process when school officially opens on September 10th. We're giving them all PPE to have in their offices, as well for students who need them. And what they're going to do from each building is they've been able to get a list together of students who were initially referred to the committee last year, put them into a nice order so they can hit the road running come September 10th. So the goal is to get all this done quickly and have those meetings so we can address student need as soon as possible. Thanks, Darren. Next slide. This slide too is what I kind of touched upon before. So one of the big experiences and takeaways we had last spring was that the continuity of learning plan really wasn't meeting many students' needs, especially students who have real really significant needs, especially in the self-contained classes. But that was built upon a continuity of learning plan that really we had to put together rather quickly given the pandemic. So we've taken, as I indicated, we've taken the experiences that and things we've learned from the summertime, from both teaching, regular students in high school who need to make up credits, to our ESY program, which had about 165 students in it, ranging from K to 12. So that was quite a diverse range of students. And as the team really worked to make it a much more meaningful experience, we've taken those learnings and added it to our program moving forward in the fall. So the expectation is that parents, teachers, students are going to have a much better experience with virtual learning. And like, as I indicated before, the goal is that as long as the metrics stay the same, we can begin to roll in our hybrid plan come the end of September. And then clearly it'll be a little bit of both. And I think we're going to find a much more agreeable platform moving forward. Okay, Darren, thanks. If you can, next slide. Same thing with speech. So speech OT related services, there are no changes given the platform. As we've talked to the speech, as the service providers, the expectation is the same. So if I'm, receiving speech services, I'm working on, my, ability to work pragmatically with language. What I could do in an individual therapist's office, I can do virtually on a screen for many students. So the IEP goals, although they may need to be kind of adjusted to fit into the virtual platform, are still the IEP goals, and the service providers, parents, and the committees have that flexibility, as well as even doing progress monitoring. So the goal is that this is going to be our model, beginning the 2021 school year, and the expectation is that, there's no such thing as a virtual IEP compared to an in-person IEP. Like I said, the IEP is the IEP. And we need to simply maximize the services so we can ensure students to have, once again, the best educational experience that we can provide them. Okay, Darren, next one. Okay. This question was, how will mandated IEP services be provided by staff and schools on a virtual platform? I think I just mentioned that. And clearly, like I said, on a virtual platform, we're going to move forward with the IEP as the educational focus is going to be virtually, and then when students come back into a hybrid model, that's where teachers, providers, parents, students can have an opportunity to kind of think about how best to meet those needs. I can let everybody know that, like I indicated, as we move to the hybrid model, the goal would be that after our K-1-2 experience, and I hope it's a very successful experience, after that, I want to segue back in the related service providers. So once again, those services are really being provided to the greatest extent and to the greatest number, as far as frequency, during in-person sessions. So hopefully by, sometime October, mid-October, for most students K to 6, most of those services will be delivered inside of a school setting. Okay, Darren, you want to go to the next slide? As far as masks and PPE, we ordered, as Mr. Lukema had indicated, we have plenty of PPE, and we've ordered masks that have the clear cutout around the mouth. We have students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and they read lips. We have plenty of students in speech class and speech sessions who need to be able to see, how their therapist is pronouncing words, making sounds. Likewise, the therapist needs to be able to monitor a student's ability to pronounce and say language. So we have plenty of masks with the clear cutout. So for those individuals who need to see that in order to access their education, we have those. We also have all the different shields and gowns and gloves. So once again, we want to make sure everybody's, safe with respect to the virus, and at the same time, they can deliver good, equitable services. So we are collecting those materials and orders for our school psychologists, speech therapists, occupational and physical therapists, so they can move forward and provide the services to the students in an absolutely effective and safe manner. Okay, Darren, next slide. Yeah, so, the guidance is really clear. People need to wear masks, unless of course they're eating and they're taking mask breaks. We will have students who for medical reasons cannot wear a mask. So, that is what it is. So they're not going to wear a mask. And that's why, as indicated to everyone previously, we're going to need to ensure that when we bring students back in, especially K1, 2, we're going to have some students who may not be able to wear a mask. Before we just bring in more students, we need to make sure that that is a safe environment, right? That for those students who don't wear masks, they can appropriately social distance. And if we need to simply work on teaching them how to socially, distance, that's going to be our goal. I mentioned this also to the previous groups. We have 2 great behavior specialists who work for the district. And in conversations with them, we indicated to them that, their focus may change. We want to ensure our students can stay in school for as long as possible, and that things like their ability to wear a mask and or appropriately social distance does not interfere with that. So we're going to take some of those that level of expertise we have that usually tries to work towards improving student engagement and other kind of outcomes like that. And in the beginning, work on things like how do we increase a child's ability to social distance. We're going to have kids in kindergarten, whether in a self-contained class or not, who are going to just be enthralled to see all their friends and want to give them a big hug. And clearly they can't do that. So then how do we take what we know on, as far as improving instruction and academic and academic achievement, and then how do we take that and parlay that into simply keeping everybody safe? So we've got our people focus in that direction. So when students come back, that's going to be our priority, because as long as people can, appropriately social distance and wear masks, we're good. And then I can bring in more students. So that's the focus we have right now. Darren, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so special education students will return to in-person instruction when the school district is able to safely reopen. Yep, I've been focusing on that and really, reinforcing that focus. Just so, hold on a second, Darren. And just so people are aware, as far as students with disabilities, we also have students have what's called a Section 504 plan. So it's kind of like an IEP. It doesn't have goals, and typically students with Section 504 plans, although they have a diagnosed disability that impacts education, it doesn't quite reach the same level as a student with an IEP. But once again, they're part of our, they're part of our school community. So all the 504 plans, as well as the IEPs, are in effect. I read and finalize most of the 504 plans and also the district's ADA coordinated students. And in the same thing, it's valid, it's in effect. Student has extra time for a test and they're taking the test virtually. Mom and dad, we're going to assume, we're going to tell you here's the kind of time, let us know how it goes. I mean, the plan is the plan. And if students have accommodations, reasonable accommodations, our goal is to try to maximize that, whether it's virtual, hybrid, or fully in person. Obviously, there's going to have to be some adjustments made because it's a virtual platform. But I think based upon the information we have over the summertime, I think those adjustments have been made, and people will be really, really happy with the product that we're putting forward. Next page, Darren. Okay, teaching assistants in nursing. So here's another question too, which is actually beneficial in the K-6 self-contained classes, because they have a fair amount of teaching assistants, which really helps facilitate wearing masks, social distancing, and ensuring that we can keep those students coming in potentially for 4 days a week. So in a virtual model, they're going to be used much like they were used last spring and summer, but to a much higher degree. After a teacher delivers first instruction, all of our certified teaching assistants can engage in pedagogy. They can teach, they can reteach, they can create lesson plans and or engage in that first lesson. But once it's been delivered under the direction of a certified teacher, they can teach. So we're going to use them to take some of those classes, even in some of our ICT classes, we have teacher assistants that kind of break up the groups, maybe have a little small group instruction, maybe sometimes a little one-to-one instruction. We're going to use them as much as possible and maximize their skill sets. And once again, no more, and is that, and it's really apparent in those self-contained classes. And we're going to use them as we plan on moving forward with the hybrid model, because they're going to be just indispensable to ensuring the health and well-being of the students, which, as I indicated before, is going to give us the opportunity to bring them in 4 days a week. And for those students and for those families, if we can do that, which is the goal, then I think people would be really happy. Then Wednesdays would be our virtual learning day, and I think for those families and for those students, definitely take advantage of it and maximize the experience. But I want that to be the icing on the cake. I don't want that to be the gotta have, which is why we're working really, really hard to bring in our most needy students in 4 days a week as soon as possible. As far as nursing support and IEPs, we do have some students who have nursing, skilled nursing on their IEP. Clearly that, is not necessary at home. However, once we go into a hybrid model, everything on the IEP stays on the IEP as if it never left. So we have our contracts, we have our nurses, they're all at the ready. And once we go hybrid and students come back into school, all the services will be there as indicated last spring. So there's nothing's been taken off and nothing will be taken off. And that is the goal. So once we go hybrid, if a student had access to skilled nursing services, they're going to have access to skilled nursing services come the first week of October. Darren, next slide, please. As far as collaboration, as indicated before, this is the 2021 school year. Everything's still on the table. High school students are taking Regents exams as far as I understand, this January and June. There's been no indication from the state of any changes to that. So as far as collaboration and scheduling, the expectation for teachers is that they're going to collaborate, whether it be virtual, hybrid, or in person. And what I would have done at a school last winter, walk down the hallway, knock on a peer's door, and talk about a student we both served. Now I'm going to do it through either phone call, email, or Google Meet. So the expectation is that teachers talk. If you're a student in an ICT classroom, the expectation is that the special ed and general ed teacher continue to collaborate. If you're a student, say at the high school, and you have a resource room, the expectation is that the resource room teacher does what they've always done, is collaborate with their peers to get a better sense of what students' needs may not be, just so they can maximize the experience. So none of this has gone away because we're on a virtual platform. The expectation is that what we would have done when everybody was in school, we're going to do while we're virtual as we start the school year off, and then as we move into the hybrid model. And scheduling the same exact thing as far as what kind of supports and services we need to give the students. So all of that is 100% intact, and the expectation is that we're going to do this exactly as we've always done this. Darren, you want to go to the next slide? I think I'm going to take a look at the questions here, and I'll address this slide in a moment and see what kind of questions we're having. With respect to transportation, this is something new that came up with many parents as well. State guidance is really clear. The students who, special ed students, and I'll focus on them, who go to out-of-district programs. The state said that, it doesn't matter what the home district's choice of, the school year. So Wappingers, given all the constraints and challenges we have, taking the ninth largest district in New York State, hybrid from the very beginning, we decided to go virtual for a lot of really good, sound reasons. However, I've got students who go to out-of-district special education programs that aren't as big as us. And those programs have decided to open up in either in person fully or in a hybrid model. So the state guidance was clear. We have to provide transportation. So I can tell you that we've been working with the transportation department, and they are working out all those routes to get all those students to those programs that are providing for live instruction, whether it's hybrid and or full-time. I can tell you, I've read some of the reopening plans for many of those programs. They're going hybrid too, because they want to make sure that they can ensure everybody's safety. But the transportation department should be reaching out to parents whose children's out-of-district placement is going to be live in some sense, with typical pickup and drop-off times, as we look to ensure that those students go to those programs and get the services that they need. So the transportation department has been working really hard the last several weeks. And if they haven't already, they should be reaching out to you really soon to tell you the typical, this is the time we're going to pick up your child from your house. Here's when we're going to come back. and take it from there. Thanks, Darren. Can you go to the next slide? So I want to go to some questions here because I think from doing this and talking to parents and emails, I've kind of got a big sense of some of the big ticket items that people were most concerned about. I'm going to go to the first question here regarding self-contained. It says, how many special class programs and students do we have across the district? So I can let you know, thinking from K-6, I'll start at K-6 first. We have our communications classes at Vassar and Kinry. They tend to be a cohort. Those students tend to have a significant amount of needs. Diagnoses can run from PDD to, autism. So those are probably some of our most neediest students. And I've been in contact with both building principals as well as assistant director. And I know they've been talking to the teachers to really see about when we go for phase 2, we can bring those students in 4 days a week. In addition, we have self-contained programs 1 to 6 at Oak Grove and Evans. So the same conversations there. However, and I'm going to be totally honest with everybody, we need to understand just some of the limitations of some of the buildings. Some buildings, depending upon the size of the classrooms and bringing everybody else in and the number of students in the class, some may have the ability to go 4 days a week and some may just not, because we can't keep everybody 6 feet apart from one another. So I know the building principals are looking at these classes creatively, trying to do that. I will say right now that if someone has a child in a self-contained class in one of the buildings, and just given the sheer number of kids and some of the teaching assistants and adults, we can't keep all 22 people socially distanced. Then if there was a benefit to this, and the benefit is that if when your child comes in for one of the cohorts, either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, the upside to that, if there is an upside, is that I'd have a class then of 6 kids with plenty of adults, so there'd be a ton of individual attention. So there may be a class or two where that's going to be the model. And the other thing I can say then is that given the teachers and the teacher assistants in the classes, we would then try to maximize that experience. However, people are at the K-6 level are looking really creatively and how best to do this. So Evans and Oak have classes of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Evans is kind of more like a 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6. Fishkill, we developed a self-contained program at Fishkill Elementary School. We have a devoted K, a 1, 2, and this year a 3, 4. In addition, Myers has a K and a 1, 2. So once again, we have phase 2, both of those classes are coming in, as well as Gayhead has a self-contained language base at 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've talked to all of the principals and all the administrators there. And depending upon how we roll this out, I want all those students, as long as it's safe, as quick as possible, to be back sooner, and then where appropriate, come in 4 days a week. So that is the goal, and that is what we're all working really hard for. Sorry about that too. And then we also have self-contained level classes at the middle schools and the high schools. So my hope would be that as we roll out the hybrid models, because if you took a look at the phased-in plan that was presented by Mr. Lokema, I think we're looking more towards the end of October, probably bringing it in the high schools. Assuming everything looks great, K1, 3, 4, and maybe even 5, 6, we would look to bring in some of those students sooner rather than waiting for the same age peers, because there's nothing that says that they need to wait, right? If I can bring students into the high school in those self-contained classes, especially some of the level classes, we'll definitely do that. And there's nothing that says that they need to wait until their non-disabled peers are also phasing in. But I want to indicate to everybody, this is all predicated on health and safety. And as long as that's good, we're going to bring in as many students as we can in a meaningful and thoughtful manner. Another question is, will the self-contained students be in school for 4 days a week? As indicated, that is the goal, right? These are our neediest students. I understand many parents who work and have many other children at home. Trying to get all of this accomplished in the course of the day is very difficult. And as I indicated, with those students as my main focus, if I can bring those students in 4 days a week, ideally, K to 12 at some point sooner than everybody else. And then Wednesday is a day at home of virtual learning. I think for most families, that would be absolutely wonderful. And then whatever you did or couldn't do on Wednesday, and I understand some of the constraints that families are under, that would be that Wednesday becomes a luxury. So whatever you get done in that day, great. But if something happens, or there's issues with your own connectivity at home, or someone drops a Chromebook, that one day does not necessarily significantly change the whole week, because you've been here 4 days a week. They're full school days. So outside of all the PPE that we're all going to wear, it's going to be a regular school day. Another question is, on the self-contained classes remaining at Myers this year as well? Yes. So Myers has the kindergarten and first and second grade class. There are 2 classes. They're going to remain this year at Myers. And during phase 2, we bring in K1-2. Both of those classes at Myers will come in with the rest of the kindergarten, first and second grade students. Those classes are there for the 2021 school year, and I don't see them going anytime soon. Someone asked, why can't ICT students come back 4 days a week? That's something we're looking at, because that's an interesting thing, because the issue is going to be is that those classes are general ed classes. And unlike a self-contained 15-1-1 or a 15-1-1 that may only have 12 students, those classes could have anywhere, say, 25 students with 2 adults, maybe even sometimes 2 adults, maybe an additional teacher assistant. So to divide that class in half, now I'm talking about 12, 11 students in a classroom, a teacher, a special ed teacher, maybe a teacher assistant. That might be all that class can afford to hold with respect to social distancing. And if I was to bring in the special ed students for 4 days a week, that means there would be other students who simply from another cohort who couldn't come to school, and that's not something that we can entertain. However, having said that, one of the things that we're going to, and once again, this is an evolving process, and we're open to it because we're going to be creative, but we have many families in the district who have decided that right now the risks are too high. They appreciate all the work that we're doing, but they're gonna opt, they're gonna take advantage of the virtual instruction for this year, or at least for 10-week increments, because that's what we've asked people to do. So there is a possibility that you could have an ICT class, you could have any class, that based upon parents and students opting out for virtual instruction, may only have 15 students. So once again, those are things we're going to have to look at as a district and at each building and a principal to take a look, because clearly we want as many students to come back to school as much as possible. And we need to make sure that we're doing it in a fair and equitable fashion. But we may have opportunities, and right now thinking about it, an ICT class, where if the numbers were lower due to students and parents deciding to go virtual for the school year, it gave us an opportunity to bring back, once again, special ed students, given their unique needs. Well, that's something that I would advocate for. It doesn't make sense for me to walk into a classroom knowing that, they've got more than enough room to, address 3, 4, 5 other students, and we're not doing it for reasons that just seem to be arbitrary. So where opportunity presents itself, we're going to try to maximize student engagement clearly in-house. So that is something we're looking at, and once we know how many people are going to stay out virtually, we'll be in a better position to answer those questions. What makes students high needs? As I indicated before, and I'll use the students in self-contained classes in district, and even thinking about some of the students we have out of district who go to programs like the Center for Discovery. It's a program in Sullivan County for students who are really diagnosed with autism and have real significant needs. We have students go to the Anderson Center. We have students who, in some of our programs, have similar needs, but we're able to maintain them in district. I have students who are nonverbal. I have students who have, significant, emotional challenges. They have difficulty regulating themselves emotionally in the classroom. They need a ton of support. So when I think about student need, that's what we're focusing on. Clearly, everybody's got needs. We have general ed students who have educational needs. but with respect to special education, like I said, we have some students who, even outside of academics per se, they'll be getting speech for their whole educational career because their language is so delayed and so impacted that it becomes just a necessary service. So when they leave school, their communication skills are good enough so they can live a productive adult life. And I have students who aren't even going to, potentially, though we're going to try to, earning a diploma would be nice, but given their level of disability, it's really quite a challenge. So when I think about the students we serve, that's how I would define students who have really our highest needs. Clearly, everybody has needs, and I understand that. But I do have students whose needs far outweigh what would most people would typically, I think most people don't understand that if you have a hard time, engaging in communication and language, then clearly your needs are that significant, and we're going to want to see if we can address those as much as possible. Another question here, middle school, what would happen to a student who after 1 week is doing poorly in virtual learning? So I think Mr. Lakima had mentioned this, I'm not too sure in his presentation, but we are asking parents, if you're gonna choose to be virtual, we are asking that you choose to stay out the whole week, I mean the whole quarter. Reason being is that it's going to be difficult given a district our size of 10,500 plus students and growing to have students, come in and out of the programs. It's just going to be extra tension on the system. So in order to simply get the hybrid model rolling out and moving forward, for those people who've decided to stay virtual for the first marking period, our expectation is that you remain virtual for the first marking period. And then if it's something that you feel is not meeting your needs, then at the beginning of the second marking period, by all means, you can segue back in. But if we have too many people, coming and going, it is going to impact our ability to get the hybrid model off the ground. Once again, think about all the safety and health considerations we need to do on a daily basis. There's a lot to manage, and clearly, we have to minimize student movement. So that is the recommendation we've given to the community, that if you're going to go virtual, stay virtual, at least for the first marking period. And for those parents who feel as if that's too long a period to wait, then hopefully our initial virtual platform will give you a good idea about whether or not you can go the whole first marking period, or if you feel as if, this is okay, but it's not really working for us. And then as we roll into the hybrid model, I think as a family, you'll know that that's the preferred method, and that's what you're going to move with going forward. Let me go back to my questions here. How many children will be in more classes that are ICT? What happens if you have a classified inclusion student with a twin sibling that is general ed? Are they going in 4 days a week too? No, if I have a child, so if I'm reading that correctly, if I have two children, just say one is classified and is in a self-contained classroom, and the other child is in a general ed classroom, non-classified, the goal, it would not be that if I can bring in the self-contained child 4 days a week, then the other child who's general ed would not necessarily come in 4 days a week, and as of right now, would be part of one of the two cohorts. So just because the self-contained child was coming in 4 days a week, it would not necessarily mean that the other child could come in 4 days a week as well. Take a look at some of the questions. Transportation indicated before, the pickup and drop-off times for out of district should be happening soon. Some of those programs are opening up within the next week, so I can double check that with transportation and send them an email saying that people want to know these times for all those programs that are open. As I indicated, they are working on the routes and setting those up as we speak. What about child can't sit still or follow social distancing? As indicated before, we're taking our resources. We got two really great behaviorists, both trained in ABA methodology. One of them is a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, They understand behavior. They understand how to shape and modify behavior. So for students, because we may have a student who, you know, we want them to, we want them to come to school, but their ability to wear a mask and social distance and keep themselves and others safe is going to be an issue. So we're going to take our resources and aim in that direction. So my goal would be to, like I said, to take those resources and to help kids stay in school for longer periods of time. And once they're in school, then we can help work on the engagement and obviously improve the academics. But we can't maximize the academics if students aren't in school. So our focus initially is to ensure that our students come back to us and that they can stay in school. And then once that's set and that's good, then clearly we can march forward and address all the academic and other issues as well. But that's going to be our focus right off the bat. Some students do have one-to-one aids. Some of them for different reasons. Some have them for behavioral issues. Some have them for academic issues. So if there are teacher assistants, as indicated before, some students have their own, given their behavioral and emotional regulation issues, a one-to-one aid. So, if students are going to be home and those aren't necessarily issues, that's great, but we still have a teacher assistant that can help you support that student and some other students. As well, many students have shared aids. So as indicated, we want to use those people, whether we're virtual or hybrid, to the greatest extent possible, maximize learning. So yes, teacher assistants are here. If your child has one, or if they're embedded in the classroom, you can better, they are going to be used to engage in pedagogy, instruction, small group, and your one-to-one. Okay, as far as students go to the nurse's office to take medications daily, all the nurses have PPE. We're giving all of them everything that they need. And for students who take a daily medication, as long as they're not showing signs of a cold or a flu, it's going to be as it typically is. The nurses will, once again, as far as giving medications, I'm meeting with the nurses tomorrow. I didn't know if they would simply hand it to the student wearing gloves and one of those little kind of plastic cups, or oftentimes they put medications in there and then dump into the student's hand. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to do in a way that ensures that there's no physical contact. So they're probably going to wear gloves. They're going to have masks. We got for them face shields. We got for them gowns, because clearly in the nurse's office, anything can happen. So then they need to be prepared. And for those moments, they would simply do it in a way where the child was not closer than 6 feet to other adults and/or students, giving their medications in a manner that simply maximize social distancing, wearing masks to ensure that everybody is safe. So our nurses are on top of this. We've got a really good team of nurses. And like I indicated to you, we're getting them fully fitted with PPE in order to do their jobs. As far as adjustments to IEPs, if it's just adjusting a goal, something that really works on a virtual platform, you can do that through an amendment letter, no meeting. So that's going to keep it really simple for parents and teachers not to have to arrange their schedules for virtual meetings. So that's something we have talked to the assistant directors about, trying to keep this as simple and easy for everybody involved. So, and if it's, something that needs to be a minor adjustment like that, we can do it. Anything that really requires a change of program, typically, especially if it's going to go more restrictive, we need to have a committee on, and that's not going to change. But any of these little, adjustments and modifications can be done. We'll talk to a parent ahead of time, either a phone call and/or an email, indicate what we'd like to do, and as typical, then we'd send what's called a prior written notice outlining the changes we're proposing to the IEP. And for parents who've done that, when you get the letter, you simply mark the box that you give us, you're agreeing to the changes. You sign it, you mail that back, and we'll adjust the IEP quickly. So it's a fairly easy and really efficient process. So if students say virtual, can they come in for related services? Now that's something we need to discuss, because clearly what we're looking to do, and this is why I'm telling everybody what we'd like to do, but it's always going to be contingent on health and safety. if you think back to the guidelines from the Department of Health, cohorts really matter, right? So we need to think, and this isn't just about special education. This is about academic intervention services, right? Cohorts matter. Myself and Mr. Lukema, working with the nurses, are going to be doing a lot of contact tracing with information. So most of that's going to go through our offices. So, it's one thing to have a cohort of students in a classroom, but to have many, many students just come into the building every day, say to get speech, that's going to present a whole host of challenges, because after each session, the room, the chair, the desk, whatever what it was that particular student used would need to be cleaned. And this isn't like the old days when service providers with small groups could see 20 or 30 students a day. So I want everyone to think about what it's going to take to keep everybody safe and healthy, and just from a cleaning and disinfectant point of view. So those are things that we need to look at, because once again, if the opportunity presents itself, that's something that we'd want to do. We're not going to just say we're not going to do it because we don't want to do it. However, there are so many moving parts. We would have to look at all of that to ensure, once again, if I'm a speech therapist and I'm working in a building and I have kids in here now on a hybrid model on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm trying to provide services to those students, having 10, 20, 30 students segue in every day or every 2 days just for their related services, that's a variable that we need to manage well. So once again, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I'm going to say right now it's on the back burner, because once again, there are so many things to consider. We'd want to make sure that was really set in stone, so everybody was safe. I'm going to answer another question or two. Take a look at this. Okay, so let's sort of trying to see if I could pick a really good question that kind of answers many questions. Forward. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, as far as when you think about this, I think this is a good question, because I think to many people, even if you live in Wappingers and you know how big we are, when you start thinking about the numbers, it can become overwhelming. And I think then that's when I usually talk to parents and teachers and other people in other districts, and they understand how unique we are. And I know Mr. Lukema and the superintendent really wanted that point to get across. So somebody asked a question and said, approximately how many self-contained students are there in the district and all the schools combined? So as far as classified students, all classified students who are in self-contained programs, ICT, resource room, consultant teacher, even ones that just may get a related service, we have about 1,700 students classified in district K-12. That's about as many students as the Red Hook Central School District has K-12. So when you start to think about just the magnitude of what we have here, and as far as self-contained, we have a whole program at Vassar Kinnery, a whole program at Oak and Evans, almost a whole program at Fishkill, 2 classes at Gayhead, 2 classes at Myers, then full continuum self-contained in both middle schools, and 2 types of self-contained programs. We have programs for students really, they're taking curriculum level classes and they're going to work towards their reading exams, and they may need a safety net score or 2, but they're going to earn a local diploma. And then we have students who really, we're still going to work to maximize that experience, but then we're going to layer on school to work. We have great contracts with Abilities First and Dutchess County ARC. They provide a great school to work program for those students, as well as some students going to BOCES, because graduating with a diploma, although we're going to try really hard, it may not happen, and they need to leave high school with something of value. And usually those school to work programs create great relationships with providers who can follow them into adulthood. So we think about just the sheer number of students we have, it's a lot of students. 1,700 is a lot of students. And that's when you think about the magnitude then of trying to bring all those students in as quickly as possible, you can see how this can get, we have to be really careful that we're doing this, really, really slowly and in a meaningful manner. So I'm going to leave it at that right now. I am trying to answer as many questions as I can. I know we're going to post this. I'm trying to go through all of this and have something up by maybe the beginning of next week, some big ticket items. If you do have, and I've answered some questions from parents vis-a-vis email, and we also have our assistant directors. By all means, you can feel free to email your assistant director. I speak to them as well as Ms. Karen Smith. So, they have the same information that I have. But if you have anything, particular, by all means, send me an email. I'm getting to them as quickly as I can, something specific to your own particular, situation. And I'll answer that. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are asking for everybody in the community to be patient. As indicated early at the presentation, when schools closed, and I was chairing meetings, back in May, because when we came back to school, I think I mentioned this in the first presentation, we had, 7 weeks to have 700 annual reviews, myself and Karen Smith were chairing meetings. And even back then, nobody thought that we'd be here come September. I didn't think that, parents didn't think that, teachers didn't think that. I really think we thought we'd, finish the school year off, school closures, we'd all, have our summer and things would just kind of get better. But here we are. So we need to work together, be patient with the process. And as long as the data indicates, it's going in the right direction, then we're going to be able to do things, and maximize opportunity. Okay, so with that, I want to say thanks to everybody for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry for the beginning technical difficulties. I was not looking forward to having this network as well. So hopefully it was a better experience for all. And with that, I want to say thank you so much. Good night.